Oh, hello! Today we're going to be looking at how we got here. Who would have thought that an Austin 7 chassis would make such a delightful easel, hey? Well, let's have a look at how we got here, shall we? If you love chocolate on your biscuit, join our club. Do-do-do-do. Who likes chocolate on their biscuit? Maybe I do. Do-do-do-do. Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, baby. Oh. Pop it sideways. Have it dangle it sideways. Today we're going to have a look at the chassis. What I mean by chassis is everything that is behind me right now. That includes the steering assembly, the wheels, the suspension, the drive shafts, the brakes. Well, the brakes more of a suggestion than an adjective. Did I mention leaf springs? Yeah. Drive shaft, differential, everything that's behind us. We're going to have a look at it. Now, I've already given this a quick jet wash, so all of the surface stuff has come off of it. But since then, the plan has somewhat changed for this. You see, in the last couple of videos, we've been looking at the engine. And contrary to what it looked like at the start of this whole project, it's actually in really good condition, to the point that it might have recently been rebuilt. By recent, I mean in miles. Like it might have been rebuilt way back when it was in Australia, before Ian got hold of it in the 1970s, which, remember, this was already a classic car by then. This car might not have had many miles on it. Relatively, the engine might have only done 150 miles. We just don't know. After discovering that, I've sort of done a 180, because initially I was going to plonk this back on as it was and then build a really simple metal frame that has space for a fuel tank, a seat and a cover for the prop shaft, and just razz it around. But the engine is too good. That means we're going to make this nice again. We're going to make the shell reasonably nice. But yeah, what we're going to do today is take this apart, give it a clean, and go ooh, 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 all of the bits and bobs.
The first thing we need to do is get the whole chassis on jack stands. The Austin 7 overall is only just a bit over 300 kilograms, so this is probably 100 kilograms, maybe even less. So you could just lug it around yourself. You don't need any kind of thing to lift it up. Just use your arms. And now we're going to do some differential equations first to work out the projectile trajectory to shoot the teabag into the bin. Anyway, let's remove the wheels.
You don't actually need to remove the lug nuts completely. You could just get them off a little bit of the way, pull it along. Yeah, I know. Oh, but the brake's hanging off. I'll show you on the next one. Yep, I'll show you on the next one. Let's just pull this off completely. Oh, baby. Ooh. Okay. So the screws aren't on here, but that's fine. They're a bit oily, but the brakes have actually got a lot of meat on them, to the point that it doesn't look like it's hardly been used. That's amazing. Oh, blooming awesome. Ooh. It's all hand tight as well.
All of the split pins were completely mullered, so they were pretty easy to get out.
Not sure how that's supposed to come out, but still not got impact sockets that are Whitworth, but it'll be fine. Pull this off. Oh, here's the hub. Ooh. Hub's spinning around, and the hub is connected to the brake shoe, and then the brake shoe is spinning and then rubs on this, which is connected to the thingamajig. So I'm pulling on the brake cable now. You can see that is pulling that, which is obviously pushing the drum brakes outwards, which is pushing onto this. And yeah, there's plenty of meat on this. So off comes the spring. Spring number 1, spring number 2. Oh, shucks. Well, I don't even need to remove that, because that'll just come off like that. So we've got a brake shoe. We have this, looks like this retaining pad. Hopefully it's not too covered in oil that it isn't functioning. So there seems to be a nut around the back of these pinions. They're completely minging. So we've got that on the outside. We've got that on the inside. The back of this, when it's clean, it's minging at the minute. Ooh, oh, we're free from the shackles. So there is the brake cable. Now we're just going to dismantle this corner completely. So we're going to remove it from the steering arm, and I think it's this bolt. And then if we tap this out the front, like so. Oh yeah. Any washers? No washers whatsoever. You sure there's no washer there? Oh, there is a washer. Now in theory, if we tap on the top, we should get the pin out, and that should then pull off. Yeah, like that. So there's no play. Luckily, it feels like there's no play in any of these bushings, which is also a good thing, because if there was play in these bushings, we would need to swap them. Grease nipple, looking suitably greasy, but on the outside, not the inside. So yeah. We got another grease nipple up top. Let's yank that off as well, shall we? Oh, aye. Exactly the same. Lovely jubbly. There's actually quite a bit of upwards downwards play on this. So maybe we need to do the Kingpin. We'll find out soon. Now to remove the whole hub from its articulated abode, we remove this bolt on the front, I think.
Once we loosen the cotter pin that holds the Kingpin in, it is a lot looser. You'll see there is a threaded hole in the top of the Kingpin. The original ones didn't have that. You would have had to drill a hole and thread it to be able to extract it like we're doing. So this says to me that there was already some work here and it has been replaced in the past. Anyway, I used a load of different wrenches and sockets and bolts to be able to extract the Kingpin. Slowly but surely it is lifting out of the hub, and this is the whole thing. Oh, look at that. And now that is out, we can remove the hub completely. Now we go over to the other side, rinse and repeat, removing the wheels, taking the brakes off. This one was a little bit more challenging to get the whole piece apart. I took the front of the hub off to get the hub nut split pin out. And that is out. Now we can take the back of the hub off. Bloop, lovely jubbly. Because this side is the driver's side, it has got the rod that connects to the steering wheel assembly. So there is a ball joint on the end of this, so we're knocking all of the parts of the ball joint off, so we're able to lift the bar off the top of the ball that adds the articulation for the suspension to be able to move separately to the steering assembly. We're going to rinse and repeat on the Kingpin on this side. I've bagged all of these washers up so I could use them again. That hub is off, so we can remove the track rod end that connects both hubs together so they both steered instead of just the driver's side. This is the shock absorber on the front. It is a friction plate that basically slows down the suspension's bounciness. This was designed as an afterthought because the first Austin 7s didn't have these shock absorbers whatsoever, just the leaf springs, but we'll have a closer look in another video. Now let's knock out the spring shackles that connect the leaf spring to the front axle. Now we can remove the U-clamps that connect the top of the leaf spring to the chassis. Now it's all loose as a goose and it's all going to fall to pieces, so be careful there. This little ball joint at the back is for the radius arms to add some articulation. These radius arms keep the front axle from moving left or right, so it's like a big triangle on the suspension, and we can unbolt them from the axle.
Pretty minging job this. I should have worn gloves, but hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? I've got a box of gloves, I've just bought some, and I forgot. And now I'm covered in crap. Let's get the steering box off the frame. That will take all of the steering mechanisms off, and then we can work around to the back.
The steering box has got two bolts that connect from the top, and then a really big bolt that goes through the side to connect the brake pedal onto it. And then there's a bar that goes from the brake pedal that is on the steering box to the back brake rod. We'll have a closer look at that in a little bit, but let's get this all out of the way. So that is suitably grubby, but you can see the brake pedal is connected to that. This is the hand brake lever, and this connects to the front brakes via these cables. So we could just pull the cable off of that, and that is all free as a bird. And yeah, that's the handbrake just on the front, and then the foot brakes just on the back. Uncoupled brakes. This is the ball joint for the radius arm.
The whole front is done, the handbrake, the steering is all off. Now we're going to go to the middle and remove this bar thingamajiggy. So the brake pedal's here, there's a rod that connects here, and then that pushes on this bar, which pulls on this cable, which pulls on that brake, and then transfers the momentum over to this side, which also pulls on the brake on this side too. It's as simple as yanking out the split pins, I think. Or he says. Easier said than done. They're all breaking, but that's just the way it goes. Gonna go from the bottom and remove the cotters.
Of course, with this design, there is a more direct path to the driver's side brake than the passenger side brake, so there is probably a bit of imbalance there that needs to be counteracted. This is a return spring on the bar. I'm assuming that's going to return the brake pedal at some point. Once we've got both levers off either side of this bar, we're able to circumnavigate the bar from within the chassis. The next thing we need to do is remove the cable guides that guide the cables over to the rear brakes. I then focus my attention onto the prop shaft. This is the torque tube. It's basically a big ball joint that the prop shaft goes through to be able to drive the rear wheels and bounce up and down with the suspension. So we're going to knock these back and remove the bolts to connect this shaft to the rear diff and the rear axle assembly. Don't lose these shims because they've all been shimmed in place to all fit perfectly. Oh look, the diff's got curry sauce in it as well. Lovely jubbly. Now I can show you what I was trying to show you earlier about how neat it is that you don't need to remove the wheel nuts. You can just twist it to the side. How handy is that? Possibly lethal in some scenarios as well, but we won't talk about that. Let's have a look at how the rear brakes work with the cables. So we're going to pull on the cables. You can see the linings are pushing out and they'll be pushing onto the shoe, trying their gosh darn hardest to do a really good impression of a brake. Now let's unbolt the friction dampers from the rear axle. So we take this bolt off and then we give it a good old tap, and that will take the friction dampers off so we can remove the rear axle. In this design there are a lot of cotter pins. You just need to be careful when you're whacking them out not to damage the threads or misshape them, but sometimes that is easier said than done. So we're able to push this cotter pin out, which retains the bolt that goes through the leaf springs. We're also going to tap out the lever for the rear brake to aid dismantling the brake assembly later on. First, let's tap out the bar that goes through the leaf spring, but it also held the shock absorber in place on the front of it. Once that is out, the whole thing should fall to pieces. And if you do it on both sides, then the whole rear axle will come free as a bird.
Somehow lost the footage of dismantling the rear axle, so I've pushed it all back together to give you the crux of it. So the brakes are exactly the same as the front brakes. The rear hub, you have to use a bearing puller to actually pull it off the taper that is on the drive shaft, because remember it is rear wheel drive, so these rear hubs are actually directly connected to the shaft, unlike the front ones which are freewheeling. So we'll pretend jug, that comes out, boom. And because it is directly connected, there is a keyway. This tiny little thing clamps the hub to the drive shaft, so they're both connected together, so the drive can be transferred from the engine to the drive shaft, to the hub, to the wheels and onto the road. It's worth mentioning, I wish I read about this before I took it apart, that you need to take this side off first, the passenger side, the near side. You'll have a much easier time. I, however, did not, and I had to use a bearing puller to be able to remove the axle casing. Oh no, it's happened again. To be able to remove the axle casing from the bearing races. This is the drive shaft, the bit that's spinning, that's coupled to the hub, and that goes through the middle of the axle casing that holds the suspension and everything and stops the wheels from wobbling all over the place. Once we remove that, you can get the other one off as well. And then you can remove the central bit of the differential casing. Lovely jubbly. Then you're left with the differential and the drive shafts. Looking at this, like the rest of the vehicle, it's minging, but it is in very, very good condition. So we're not going to take this apart. We'll just weld it together to knock it shut so we could go drifting. Joking, but for the purpose of demonstration, here is another one of the differentials that came with the whole lot of the car. The main gear will be on here, and if we remove it, you can see these are the planetary gears that sit around the drive shaft, turning it into a differential equation machine. Lovely jubbly. Anyway, we'll have a closer look at all of this stuff when we pop it all back together.
There's not much left to do, but we do need to remove the rear leaf springs from the chassis. There is a really big bolt that retains the leaf springs, I assume, to stop it falling out, and then there is a U-clamp that clamps it in place to make it nice and rigid with the chassis. These really didn't want to come out. In fact, the other side one I had to cut off with an angle grinder. Don't worry, got a spare. This is when you need to pull the leaf spring from within the chassis. I can imagine this will be a right pain if there's quite a bit of rust in there, but luckily for us, it was just a little bit of wrestling. The other side was quite a bit worse, but I didn't film that. Now let's dismantle the rear shock absorbers. You can see there are a lot of layers with an adjustable spring that can adjust the amount of pressure that is pushing on the friction plates. All in the interest of absorbing shocks. We're going to be working on all of this stuff in a subsequent video, so we'll take a closer look at all of it later. And after all of that, it's done. Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for this video. As you can see, the chassis is now completely free from its shackles of being within a car with its pieces. I've been slowly giving it a good old clean. It was absolutely minging, but we'll have a look at that in the next video. I've got some fancy period trick upgrades that I'm going to be doing to this. I've already spoken about quite a lot of it over on Patreon. If you're interested to see where this is going, then go and check it out over there. Needless to say, it also supports the videos on this channel and Look Mum No Computer and all that stuff. So yeah, anyway, until the next video, I'm Sam. This is a wonderful easel. I mean an Austin 7 chassis. And if you like what I said, have a good subscribe and don't forget to try it. Totally do.